Would you let your kids do drugs? Would you use drugs? To this, most of you would answer, of course not. Would you let your kids be given candy as rewards at school, candy on the holidays, candy as a reward for potty training, or maybe even soda to drink with dinner? What would you say if I told you that you and your families are addicted? Until I was diagnosed with a condition resulting in my decision to drastically reduce my sugar intake, I had no idea how much sugar affected my daily life. Do you? Sugar is a drug in disguise, and we are all addicted. First, I will define some of the terms that I will use in my argument. Second, I will set the limits of my argument in order to keep it focused. Third, I will discuss the points that prove my argument. Now that I've introduced my debate, I will begin by defining my terms. The American Society of Addiction Medicine's website, asam.org, updated in 2019, defines addiction as a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and an individual's life experiences. I will personally define sugar as the sweetening agent that is put into not only desserts, but also sweet and savory foods. Last, my definition of disguise is something that has been hidden or masked away in a way that it can be easily overlooked. Now that I have defined my terms, I will proceed to set my limits. The arguments that will be covered in this debate are as follows: animal studies and evidence which prove the addictive qualities of sugar, how sugar scientifically affects the body and causes addiction similar to drugs, and how this trend of sugar addiction can lead to unhealthy habits and obesity in humans. The issues I will not allow to be brought into my debate are comparisons of food from previous decades to food now, how to reduce the amount of sugar production companies put into their foods, and diseases that individuals are born with that require them to consume a certain amount of sugar. After setting my limits, I will now move on to my application. In a 2018 article titled "Sugar Addiction, Is It Real? A Narrative Review," James DiNicolantonio states that animal studies show that sweetness such as sugar or saccharin is preferred even over that of addictive drugs like cocaine. Animal studies are one of the best ways to study how humans react to a desired stimulus. The previously mentioned study goes on to mention that sugar produces similar effects to cocaine. It can alter one's mood, induce feelings of pleasure and reward, and in some cases it can cause psychoactive effects. The same authors explain that humans are naturally driven to sugar as a means of survival because the sugary foods provide such a considerable amount of fat and calories. While consuming as much as possible may be an evolutionary instinct, it's not necessary for survival. Physically, humans have no part of the body that requires sugar. Another example comes from Margaret Westwater in the 2016 article "Sugar Addiction, the State of Science." A study was done with rodents comparing the effects of drug and sugar. With drugs, the rodent models of addiction traditionally frame the drug of choice as a positive reinforcer. After the rodents were continually exposed to the drug, researchers tested the limits to which the rodents would go to receive the drugs. Some rodents went as far as to endure pain and negative effects to be allowed access to the drugs. When deprived of the drug, the rodents of course showed symptoms of withdrawal. When exposed to sugar, they exhibited similar reactions with the limits they would go to access the sugar, and they had similar withdrawal symptoms. In fact, some of the rodents preferred self-administration of saccharin or sugar over cocaine and paid a greater price for the saccharin than for the cocaine. I've talked about the effects of sugar tested on animals, but now you're probably wondering, how does that affect me? In Sugars, Exercise, and Health, published in 2017, Roberto Codella explained that highly processed foods rich in sugar content are implicated in addictive-like eating behaviors. Snack foods, desserts, and fast foods are among these processed foods. Sugar can have detrimental effects on our bodies over time when eaten often. The same article explains that the resulting addictive appetite behavior up to binging might be coupled with contemporary obesity pandemic. Sugar-loaded foods make us feel rewarded and have feelings of pleasure. Like a drug, most users are oblivious or willfully ignorant to the side effects. Now that I have proven my case, I will now conclude my debate. Sugar is a drug in disguise, and we are all addicted. There are multiple animal studies which prove that sugar is addictive, in some cases more addictive than drugs like cocaine. I define my terms, sugar, addiction, and disguise. I set my limits of what can be argued and what I consider off topic. Then I prove my case with sources and evidence from studies. My purpose for this debate was to educate my audience about the negative effects of sugar. To support my debate, I explained the issues of sugar addiction in relation to animals, rodents, and humans. As I conclude my debate, I want you to consider a few questions. Should I use sugary treats to reward myself or my children? Should I begin to look at nutritional labels? Am I addicted to sugar? And if you think you're not addicted, I want you to consider one last question. Could you live a life without sugar?